Welcome back to Let's Have a Powwow. I am your host, Amy Farid, and I'd just like to start by saying I am very grateful for the feedback I have gotten since our launch last week. Please keep them coming. I love to read the comments from all of you. My favorite comment came from my cousin Melissa in Oklahoma. She writes, "I'm so country that I'm just trying to keep up with the lingo. I live in Winona." That made me chuckle. Thank you for listening, sis. On this week's episode, I speak to a fellow Wahzha'z, Yatika Starr Fields. Yatika was in New York for the opening of his solo exhibition, Home as It Was, at Garth Greenan Gallery. The show, which features large-scale shields, are constructed out of tent and tarp materials. His shields evoked a feeling of resilience and necessity. They were stunning to see in person, and I highly recommend if you get the chance to see Yatika's shields. Home as It Was is on view at Garth Greenan Gallery till April 12th, 2025. Enjoy this chat with Yatika. We talk about injuries we have sustained from punk shows, bike messengers, and runner's high. WayWi Na. See you soon, cousins. Howay, relatives. Welcome back to the Let's Have a Powwow podcast. I am so happy to be sitting next to my guest today. He is a painter, a muralist, an ultra runner, which we're going to unpack that later. But give it up for Yatika Starr Fields. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. It's good to be back in New York City.
Yes.
You know, I have a history with it.
And this is why Yatika is on this podcast, because he's an OG urban indigenous person that used to live in Brooklyn. He's in town. You live in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now.
I live in Tulsa.
But he's actually in town this week. Last night, he had a solo show at the Garth Greenan Gallery in Chelsea.
Yep, Garth Greenan.
Garth, not Gareth.
Garth, yeah.
Garth. It was incredible. That we're going to talk about that later. So when you invited me to the show, I was like, oh my God, Yatika's in town. I need him for the pod. So I kicked the person out that I was going to have today. And I was like, I have to bump Yatika up because he's here. He's also another Wahzha'z. So I got to represent for, the Oklahoma indigenous. Yatika had a solo show. He's major. He's a muralist. There's so many things to say about him, but I want to start in the beginning, in the very beginning. When did you know the art life was for you? Was there a significant moment? Was there anything, a spark that happened that you knew this life was for you? Because you're a successful artist at that.
Yeah. Okay, it's good to be here again. I'll say that, and I don't think I'm huge. I don't know, like playing that entity of being humble, maybe, but no, for real, I'm just like, no, it's just every day's different. And I was reading something right before getting on here, and it's about really granting the day, not knowing that the next is granted, and sitting with that for a moment and being appreciative of like being here or today, and knowing that there's a lot of things out there that could, prevent that and what people are going through. So I kind of look at it that way,
Yes.
But it's just a matter of doing when it comes to art, and, not big, but just moving forward really. And then success is just like making the work physically and putting it out there, and if you get that, then yeah, that's a successful point in your path. I don't think I'm successful. There's a lot of things and words I don't really integrate into my life and doing because I just feel it's inhibiting or just puts me and projects me into like a mindset of I'm above the work or something, or I'm above the ability to like, I don't know, I place the action and ability of the art and letting it translate itself and do its thing more so than ego, right?
Yeah.
So I get that first and foremost with that. And then what was the question?
I appreciate the explanation, and I love that because that's why your art is
so powerful and impactful when you see it. Like you get, like I got such a great feeling because I know that what you put into it is not coming from an egotistical place, or a narcissistic place. It really is a conversation, and it's just deeper than that. But you are a celebrated artist to me, and I will celebrate you. And this is also why I just feel like people should know about you. But the question was, when did you know the art life was for you? And would you call it art life?
No, I wouldn't call it art life. I would call it a life of like creating and being open and maybe vulnerable. You know, it's taken me a long time to understand what even vulnerable means, and to myself, and to allow people in to see my work, and experience it and create it with full intention and heart. But I grew up in an artistic household. You know, both of my parents are artists. You know, my mom, and
Legendary artist.
She loves you, by the way.
I
So
love
she's gonna be
I love
really
Anita
psyched about
Fields.
this, you know.
I love Anita Fields. His mother is amazing. We were going to go into the whole family of artists that he's from too.
Got to give her props.
Oh, most definitely. Ooh.
And so I was always around it. I was always around creating, and you know, being Osage, I was put in the dances at a young age when I was 5, and
What a blessing.
it definitely is a blessing. And you know, you're people ask, well, why do you paint like this, or you know, what's the meaning behind how you paint or the usage of color? And one of the things being Osage is, you know, the great mystery, and not trying to like figure it out too much, but just let it be and exist in it. And it's not a science where we're trying to like discover every single aspect to it, but just appreciate it and let it do its thing. And that's kind of how I do with painting. But I do take inspiration, and I think that being Osage and being in the Alonshka dances and being around our regalia and wearing it, and the rhythm of the drum, having that a part of my life every year since I was a kid, or being in the Native American church since I was a kid, you know, it's a part of me. And also I think and also art is a part of me, contemporary art making, contemporary art practice, and events. And so you combine those two, and then you have probably the work that I make. So I didn't really know that you know, at an early age, I enjoyed drawing. I enjoyed painting, not as much as I do now, but just, you know, as a kid, playful painting, playful drawing. And then I remember having a conversation with my mom at one point, you know, saying I want to do this. And she was like, you know, if you're going to do this, then this is what it's going to take, really. And I was like, okay. Like,
yeah. What did she say? Because being an artist is hard. You know, if you're really an artist and you're just trying to create and make art, and you're not trying to get I don't know, like a corporate job, you know, if you're trying to live that art life of painting in the sense of, and living with your beliefs intact. And that's what I think of as the art life. It's hard. And I know a lot of unsuccessful artists, and it like, it's torturous to some because they have not what you have with community, in Lashka, our ways, our Osage ways. And I think that's why you have become, you know, successful, but you have that community. But did your mom ever tell you, like, be prepared, because this is not easy? And it is, you have to be vulnerable, right, to share your art.
Well, she did say in words, you know, that it's going to be a hustle, and you're going to have to work hard for it, and it's not easy.
She was honest with you.
She was very honest, and she always is
Amazing.
honest with me. Maybe too honest sometimes with my work, and I'm like, okay, you know, you can chill out on that. But
that's what we were talking about. My last guest, her whole family, her mom is an actress and singer. Her grandmother was. I was like, what's it like growing up in a family? She's like, a lot of egos, a lot of opinions.
Yeah, you know, we have our own opinions and
yeah,
perspectives on it. But I saw through perspective and experience what she went through, you know, sacrificing a lot to put food on the table for us. And, you know, my dad working, and her following her dreams of creating and being an artist herself while having a family.
Yes.
And 3 kids.
And so, she's a whole other generation from us, where women at that time, we don't have a lot of women from that era representing Native women, Indigenous artists, or just artists in general. Like, so I remember once my mom had bought a piece of hers and had it on our mantle. And I remember growing up, she would always be like, oh, this is an Osage woman artist. And she was so proud of that. And finally, your mom was walking by and Wakon or something. And it's like, that's the artist. That's her. I was like, oh my God. So it was so cute. But my mom was so excited about like, she's a woman. And my mom loved the arts. And so anyway, that's so cute. I just wanted to go on a tangent about your mom.
That's a
I love
story.
Miss Anita Fields. And she has many fans. But so she was honest with you. And your father, is he a photographer?
He's a photographer.
He's
a photographer. Muskogee photographer.
Yes.
And Cherokee and so he, he's he does portraits, documentation of a lot of just kind of our cultural aspects, communities.
Beautiful photos.
A lot of black and whites.
Yes. Which I love.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. And, he does a lot of
we will also be in black and white.
Documentation of like old church houses, Native American church houses, Baptist church houses.
Love.
So there, and then he documented a lot of folks that, are no longer with us. And he was really about that. And he's always been doing that, photographing and portraiture, trying to tell a story and keep memories alive in that way. And that was something that, I think also, I was doing photography at a young age before I was painting because I was learning from like the dark room from him and everything. And I think there's a lot of things that translate in photography into painting, mostly composition and things like that, which I feel like I have a natural intuition of understanding of placement with things. So it worked well.
You do, even in your abstract works, there's such a beautiful composition within what you're saying. It's you have to check out Yatika's work because it is incredible. And I love balance. I love composition, and it's great. It's just gorgeous. So I see that photography background in that too. And photography is so much fun. Do you take pictures though?
Yeah, I mean, we have our phones. We're
all the
taking
time.
Photos
Yeah,
all the time. We have Instagram. So I mean, But going like to digital and then format with like film. For sure. Like I love not as much as I'd like to, but I definitely have the access to it when I want. And if I'm going to an event or something where I feel like, I think might be wanting to like take some photos, then I'll bring the camera and things like that.
Do you use digital or film?
Mostly digital now, but I had a film camera that I really liked and I actually got stolen out of my car. So I don't have a film camera at the moment, but I'll be getting one soon because I love shooting film. There's nothing like it, getting the film developed.
And there's a nostalgia, even just, I have an old camera from my dad, an old Lumix, and I just was playing around with it the other day, and there's still film in it. And I'm like, I don't know if this is broken or if it's in there still, but I'm just like, okay, I got to keep going. I was like, what is it, 24 or 36? I don't know what the roll is, but I'm like, I'm just trying to take pictures, but I want to take a meaningful thought out photos instead of just like trying to get, because I want to open the back and see if there's film in there because I want to develop it. Mm-hmm. But loading film, and Steven too, he's an art student and an artist, not an art student. You were like a long time ago. Anyway, about film. I love film. I love the old Polaroid film. I love hearing that. I like tearing away the Polaroid. Mm-hmm. Like I am a huge fan of photography. Okay, so artistic family. You're also, shout out your sister, Wilena. She's, a puppeteer. Mm-hmm. An artist. Like, she's also doing great work now that I'm seeing. Had no idea that was going on. Love what she did for the celebrations back home. Or what was it? Last year?
The quincentennial or something. I can't
say it.
There's another phrase in there that I'm
Was it 150 years?
Yeah. It was a lot of years.
It was a lot of years. It was over a century, and that's why I can't pronounce it. But did this beautiful play. The family is just illustrious. And you came out of that. You told your mother, I want to do this. And she created an environment for you to do this. And your father. And your brother. Your brother's a violinist, right?
Yeah, my brother.
Fiddle?
Yeah, fiddle, bluegrass player, old-time music, any instrument, really. He just understands music. And he's always just traveling the world, actually, just jamming and playing. I think I know he does solo work, and then he's also like in multiple bands, and he's just like, he can do whatever,
sure.
you know. I mean, my sister too, you know. She's doing her Wahzha'z puppet show,
Yes.
and which gets the community involved and together and doing something creative, which is super cool. She now works at the Philbrook, Elena does. So she's around that collections and helping steward in kind of a new
amazing
native understanding of native community in Tulsa that hasn't previously ever really been at the Philbrook or institutions in Tulsa. They've always kind of collected here and there, but I feel like there needs to be a permanence in there.
I love what Wayne is doing with the plays and incorporating the community into her show.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is incredible, to have something in a really small town, have these beautiful creative expressions, and they get to be part of it. And people were so excited about that. And I love, like, it gives hope to people and hope through the arts. And that is what I love. And I feel like for me, missing out when I was young, I found it, you know, but I think also a lot of us, like in my era, I had to come to New York also to work in what I do now in fashion and celebrity and stuff. But I don't think you have to leave anymore. You know, the internet is such an easy way to connect and to create and put your art out there. Like when I had a band, like we were here, like, oh, we have to play like CBGB. So we played CBGBs. Oh, we have to play the Continental. So we have to, you know, but now it's so different. Like you don't need to play that. And like when I see you guys back home, like dancing, or I see you like at Cane's and like the whole thing, it's like, oh, you don't, I feel like there's not that rush where I have to leave home to go and make it and to live out my creative life. It doesn't seem like that anymore. And I think maybe that's just an internal thing that, you know, when you travel the world, you come home like, oh, it's like Dorothy, you know, it's like, it was all right here all along, you know, like I see the beauty in so much more when I go home. And I'm like, each time I go, I'm like, I don't want to go now. I don't want to go back to New York. But anyway, so I love that Welena has included the our people in her in her art. It's so important for young people to see the possibilities that are out there, you know, instead of getting in trouble, or, you know, maybe that sparks someone to do art or be a hairstylist or a makeup artist. You know, that's what I loved about all the productions happening with Res Dogs and, you know, Fancy Dance, all the things that are happening there. Is like, it's giving these people this like, wait, I don't have to just live and work, you know, retail or at a store. Like there's just more opportunities for people there. And I love that. Okay. So you went to art school in Boston.
I went to school in Boston. It was
how was Boston? How did you like living in Boston?
I did like living in Boston. You know, so I went straight to Boston from Stillwater, Oklahoma after high school, and I was just getting back from Italy because I did like a month in Italy studying landscape painting in Tuscany with the mentor and some students, and I had a blast. You know, you can drink when you're 18 there. And I was just like, oh shit, let's have fun, you know, in Rome, and checking out all the museums in Florence, the Uffizi. And so I was having a good time. I remember spending all my money that I had really on like leather shoes and a leather jacket.
That's the place to buy it though, is in Italy.
Yeah, these Italian leather shoes.
That's the best place.
And then I don't which either two I don't have anymore. So it's like, whatever. I mean,
yeah.
But
the things that we find, I mean, hey, it could have been a lot worse. You could have spent your money on something else, but you're like, I want good shoes. That's like, that's so cute.
I remember we had a little exhibition towards the end before we left, and I was wearing the two things, like, you know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
And that's what mattered to me.
Yeah.
But yes, I went to school in Boston at the Art Institute of Boston, and it was a good time, you know, because I had a few options. I had either San Francisco, School of the Arts in Frisco, and Savannah School of Design.
Oh, yes.
Or IIA in Santa Fe, and then some like all guys school in like some weird place. And
all guys school.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
I was like, definitely not doing that. It seemed like it was all gonna be like all white dudes, you know. Anyway, like it was gonna be weird, and so I was like, I needed to get to New York. That's like was my intention. I had been studying art my whole, like most of my life, like reading books and self-educating myself and like these stories and history. And I knew I wanted to be in New York, and how was I going to get there? Well, whatever way I could. And so Boston was it. It was going to get me closer to New York.
So that's why you chose Boston.
Yeah, that's why I chose Boston. And I kind of wanted to get ahead of whatever else was happening. And I thought that, if I went to these other schools, it wasn't going to allow me to do that. And I went to Boston, and Boston was cool. I was into punk growing up. My sister was into punk and metal.
Elena got you into punk?
Yeah, well, she was dating this guy. He was a native skinhead. And he made me and my friends tapes of like oi bands. And so I was really into oi in like high school. And it's some wild stuff, and I was skateboarding, and yeah, so I was into all this stuff already, and Boston had a really great music scene, and we went to a lot of oi shows, and good punk scene in Boston, actually, good punk history.
Like Middle East.
The Middle East.
Yeah, I played in the Middle East.
Broke my leg at the Middle East one time, like in the pit, I think at a conflict show.
Oh my God.
Or Cox Bar, one of those.
Oh my God, iconic.
But
that's the place to do it.
Yeah, I think, and yeah, I remember I was underage too there when that happened, and I was just like crawling out of the pit in pain, and I remember just downing like 3 pints of beer to numb myself.
That is so punk painful. As fuck. That is actually punk as fuck.
I wasn't old enough to drink. But
we were all going to shows underage drinking. It was, yeah.
So, I mean, Boston was a good time in that sense. There's a lot of schools, colleges in Boston, and that made that city like really cool for a 20-something-year-old to be immersed in, because there's so many events happening, so many art events, so many music events, so many like conversations, intellectual events. You have MIT, you have Harvard, you have, Boston College, you have great museums.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty cool place. I mean, I've been a lot of places, and as a young kid who's like into everything and open to a lot, that's a good place that has it all.
Yeah.
And coming from Oklahoma, it wasn't so big that it was like overwhelming.
Yes.
And I could get to the woods or the ocean.
Yes.
To get to the nature, because I'm from Oklahoma. I enjoy the woods and the river. And Boston was like the good stepping stone before New York.
Yeah.
For me, because I could take the bus from New York.
Yeah.
And which I did all the time,
Yeah.
So
I have 2 clients that both went to that same school as you, and they say the same thing too. You 3 are the only people that I've ever heard that have liked, people of color, that have liked living in Boston. And because they were at that art school and they were like, oh my God, it was like the best time of my life. But it was also our era. I mean, they're like a little bit older than us, but yeah, it was like the same kind of like by 5-6 years. So yeah, so that college had a good little community, had a good vibe going on.
I wouldn't. Well, yeah, definitely Boston, and it's a few colleges, and I think it's how you interact with that city, and we were all about it. So I was with a lot of other artists of color, and we're all hanging out. But I definitely, like any state, any city, there's racist assholes there, and and Boston's no different than any others. And yeah, it's a very like Puritan, it's New England.
Literally.
So I mean, they pride themselves on the America.
Plymouth.
I mean, Plymouth. I mean, when you think of the Pilgrims, you think of. I mean, they have pilgrim hats on the Mass Pike.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, it's there, but there's also this too. And that's in every city, really. But,
yeah, literally. I mean, it is like the pilgrim hat. It's like the ground zero of colonization in America for those people. I found this quote and I loved it. Graffiti is very confrontational. And this was me rebelling against the Western idea of fine art. It was me finding another new voice, a new style, rejecting everything I had just learned in college. So you went to school, you studied fine art. And then how did you get into graffiti?
I got into graffiti a lot, like I'd say full on in Boston for sure. But prior to that, I was dabbling around in Oklahoma. And I took a couple trips through some scholastic awards that I received in high school, through some award ceremonies in DC, the John F. Kennedy Center, for some paintings that I did. And on those trips, I was really into the graffiti I was seeing on the train lines, specifically in specifically in near DC, and I saw a Cool Disco Dan piece, and he's a legend writer, and I was really intrigued by that. And then I remember I'm an avid chess player as well, and I was playing chess in DuPont Circle, and I was like 17 or 18, and this bike messenger. It's interesting because what happened in that park that day, I became, and I met a graffiti writer, and who I was playing chess with, and he was showing me his black book, and I was like, "What is that?" Because I had a similar sketchbook, but it was just like sketches of like nudes and flowers and things like that.
Yeah.
And this was like straight letters, and I was like, "Wow, what is that?" And so he was telling me about it, and we were playing chess, and then the Spike Messenger rolled up, and yeah, so it was like a foreshadowing to like my life almost. And
the bike messenger rolled up like he was friends with the writer?
Something that's DuPont Circles are, I think, where all the messengers hung out.
Okay.
So there was like they're all hanging out there. But then I came back to Oklahoma, and then started dabbling in it, graffiti, and then I got to Boston. And
so you were in high school?
Yeah, I was in high school.
Okay.
In Oklahoma, but then I got.
Were you like tagging around?
Yeah, I mean, at like.
Did you do the stickers? Like
some stickers, yeah.
Yeah,
but
like tagging and then posting them. That's what we used to do.
Mostly it was like at the lake, at the spillway. They had like all those huge walls, and but then I got to Boston and met some other guys that were into graffiti from San Diego, and then we started, hanging out and doing it, painting, and started a crew together, and would go out.
What's your crew name?
My crew, it was HFK. That could stand for a few things. Have fun, kids. I think that's kind of mainly what it stood for. Then it switched to HFJYK, and then just JYK, and I mean now it's evolved into I don't know what, but
dope.
So yeah, we were just painting at night, in the alleys of Boston, on the freeway, on the turnpike, and partying, and there were fights, and then we come down to New York and party with the New York graffiti guys, and then this was like the real deal where it was happening. But yeah, graffiti. I mean,
did you notice the difference between the New York graffiti guys and the Boston graffiti guys?
Yeah, New York graffiti guys are insane.
Our New Yorkers.
So
they're
they
have the ego, they have the gusto.
Yeah, and it was just dangerous. It was criminal lifestyle almost. It was just very like.
Well, it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is illegal. But then there's other aspects to being, if you're going to do that, then this is what's going to happen as well,
Yeah.
But it was just like weird. A lot of partying, and so
yeah.
But to say first and foremost, I don't party anymore. And we can even have a conversation on it. I think the last drink that I had was 2013.
Wow, dope! Congrats, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I didn't also make that decision, but in the interim,
you had enough partying. You've been partying since you were breaking your leg underage drinking.
Exactly. I had fulfilled my partying duties and no more. Yep. So I had enough.
I feel that
enough drinks to last me a lifetime.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, so. Yeah, and that was part of, leaving New York and then kind of moving on and figuring out other aspects of my life. But at the time, I was a young 20-something person having a good time, like any 20-year-old would do. And you're coming into the city and being immersed in graffiti and art. And it's a fun place to be when you're 20 years old.
In your 20s, it's the best. It's the actual fucking best place. I tell that to Luna, my daughter, when she comes to New York here and there with me, and her and I, we just kind of vibe, and she's like, "Oh, I think I'm going to move to New York." I'm like, you know what? When you're young, it is perfect. It's amazing. Just like me and her father, like we had our trajectory, and then there comes a time. He's from upstate, like Onondaga country. I'm from Oklahoma, and where you need trees, I need grass. Which Bushwick has none of.
Mm-hmm.
But now, since my generation, like the parents there, they started to plant trees in Bushwick. It became a whole thing. And so that's why I moved up to Beacon. And I absolutely love it because I can still take the train and do all that. Anyway, so yes, I get all of that. But the graffiti was a way for you. You were doing fine art classes, taking classes. We were gotten this very like colonized version of art, right? Mm-hmm. And I love that, like breaking that mindset. And it reminds me in hair, there's very classic techniques of doing hair. And to do those techniques, it's certain way of doing it. And it's like, okay, this is how you learn. And if you know how to do it, it's fantastic. But one of my favorite stories from my mentor, who's French and was taught a very classic French way of hairstyling by Monsieur Alexandre. And he did, all the amazing, beautiful, gorgeous screen goddesses, Sophia Loren and Marilyn and everyone. And he learned from this man how to do these beautiful French, coiffures, right? And when he started assisting other people besides his mentor, you apprentice, right? Other French people. And there's this hairstylist, Julien Dice, who is my favorite hairstylist. And this man had him backstage at a Comme des Garçons show. And Laurent is this like very strict young French boy who's an amazing classical French hairstylist. And he sees this, he's because Julien Dice is also a painter and an artist and a sculptor. So he sees this hairstylist creating this like nest on this hair. And Laurent says, oh my God, he doesn't know how to do hair. He's like, I have to teach him. He's seeing this man like, oh, he doesn't know how. But what was happening, Laurent's mind was blown because he's seeing his classical trained brain like just be like, what is going on? This does not make sense to me. And once he started assisting Julianne Moore and realizing, oh, no. It's deeper than my classically trained. Like this is saying something else. He's doing sculpture on the hair. He knows how to do the foundational, but he fucked it up, remixed it, chopped it, and screwed it up. And even, I feel like Laurent would also say that too. He's the best, that we have in our industry, because he took that classic way of hairstyling and like flipped it up and created and still creates these beautiful sculptural pieces out of hair and wigs and other fabrics. And this quote reminded me of that, of when you have to like take your brain outside of what we've been taught so much about just anything, like how we've been taught in regular public school under, this capitalist system. There's a deeper art form that can happen if your brain is ready to accept that. Mm-hmm. And I just love that quote. Mm-hmm. But when you said I want to go back to DuPont Circle. Mm-hmm. You said you met up with a bike messenger, and you were a bike messenger. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole lifestyle. In New York City, bike messenger, it's a whole lifestyle. Would you say?
Yeah, very much so.
Yes. Dave, my ex, was a bike messenger for a month. And I remember one time I had a day off and I was like, oh, I love riding my bike, right? And at this time we lived in Harlem. So he was like, okay, I'm going to go to work. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go on a few runs with you. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is so fun. Like going down Amsterdam, like, it's a mountain. Like Manhattan is an island, but it has hills, and especially on the west side, on the Upper West Side. So I remember like, oh, fun. We're going to go. He's like, oh, okay. The next one is like, back uptown. I'm like, oh, wait, so we have to go back up the mountain. And mind you, we're from, Oklahoma has some hills. It has some things, but not like this for the bike. You don't ride your bike. Anyway, I was dying. I was like, oh, I'm good. I have the most respect for bike messengers because one, I've seen it. Two, the whole stealing the bikes situation, getting your bike stolen, the drinking, the partying, the lifestyle is wild. Because we went to a Christmas party once for Breakaway. I think it was at Breakaway.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was the funnest thing I've ever been to. But also I was like, I'm not going to survive this. Like, we need to go. But what I also saw was a strong community within the bike messenger. And did you have that same experience, like being a bike messenger?
Yeah, there's a great big community here in New York, but not only in New York, but every city. And we would have actually messenger championships, called Worlds, and different cities would host them, like Tokyo or Copenhagen or Melbourne. Anywhere in the world, there's messengers everywhere. I mean, any major cities. So there's a whole global network of messengers. Even the North American Courier Championships happen in different cities in North America, and that still happens. And then there's messenger organizations within every city that represent that faction of groups. So there's a big organization globally of messengers, and usually they try to promote, health, some kind of healthcare, or kind of, like what you need to know as a bike messenger, know your rights and things like that. Because it's a really tough job, and the messenger golden era heyday of making money was in the 80s. I don't know what it's like now, because it's transitioned from like mostly singular persons to where you see more cargo fleets out there. You see people with like carts, and now they're hauling more.
Yeah, in the back, right?
Yeah.
Like the big flatbed.
Yeah, that really wasn't a thing when I was messengering here in New York. Now it's all, through apps ordering.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you really need to like write stuff down on papers anymore. Right. Or you don't need the radio.
Yes, there was radios involved.
Yeah, so I mean, it's evolved, the whole game, and I would imagine they maybe make some good money, but you have to hustle. It's the more that you deliver, the more money you're going to make, and the bigger
100%
is.
They kept New York alive, especially like in my business in fashion. Like we would have like, like, oh my God, we have to get this Prada dress to, I'm sure you would have to go to studios and pick up shit.
I was at studios all the time delivering portfolios.
And back in the day, we would have to know, everything's digital now, but we would have a House of portfolio, which was this thick with our tear sheets in it. Couriers would come, bike messengers would come to be like, oh, the client from Neiman's wants to see you, or the client from, Barney's. They'd have to come to your house, or if it was at your agency, go to my agent, pick it up, go there, and that was part of like, you get billed for that, unless some agents would be like, it's on us. But yeah, that's how we do it. But bike messengers are how New York City has ran forever. Like Prada dress needs to go to this studio, then needs to go to like, a celebrity to wear later that night, and it was only possible through. Even still, I got hair products the other day from, Bumble and Bumble, and it was like that. Still, I hope bike messengers are still, I see them. Today I saw an Amazon bike cart thing, and that was the first time I saw that. And I was thinking about your show and thinking about dystopian futures. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, oh my God, we're all just going to start working for Amazon. And we're just going to start delivering things that we all buy, that we all have to deliver to each other, because it got dark. It got dark. It was just like, wow, Amazon. Whoa. Anyway, so yes, so bike messengers, shout out to you. That's hard work. Like, wow. I lasted 2 hours, and then I was like, I'm gonna ride my bike back home now. Oh my God, the hills. I was like, no, there's no way. I remember Dave got hit. He got doored.
Yeah.
And bike got messed up, and he flew. It was like on Fifth Avenue. Someone doored him. And did you ever? I'm sure.
Yeah, I
got hit.
Yeah, I totally got hit. A few times I got hit. A couple times. One time though, that's really memorable. 2 times that I remember, I got hit and I got knocked off my bike. One time, both times I flipped. But this is on Park Avenue, like 36th Street. Mm-hmm. I got hit and I did a flip off my bike and landed on my feet and ran the momentum off.
Wow.
And so if someone was watching me, they would have been like, what the hell did I just do? Like, it was like
you flipped and then didn't like skid and fall. Like,
no,
you, like,
I landed on my feet and ran the momentum off. I remember that. And I was like, wow, that was crazy. And I had a bag on full of like shit. So I guess the weight of that like kind of
flipped you and then like stuck the landing.
Yeah. And stuck the landing and ran it off. And I was like, wow. But then the other time I landed on my back, but I had a full thing of, so I didn't like, I didn't like hit my head, but those are the worst. And, I know a lot of people that didn't make it that got killed. And I don't know if they still do it, but they have like because I think in New York City, like around 50 people a year die by bike in Manhattan around that.
Oh, I believe that.
So, I mean, now it's probably even crazier because of all like
city bikes,
we're as skilled as possible messengers. I call
Yeah.
I call it the eagle eye. Like
Yeah.
when I ride, I take in everything that's happening and make quick decisions without any hesitation. Because when you hesitate is when you get killed, or when you get. And that bike lanes are on the side. That is the death zone. It's like you need to be riding right in
center,
the middle and the
right?
center where people can
Yes.
see you and holding on to cars and shit like that. And
Yep.
because when you're on the side, that is not the place for bike lanes.
No.
New York City does not need to have cars. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
like it needs to take a nod from like Holland,
Yeah. Amsterdam. Yeah.
Copenhagen, any of those places. Like that's what New York City should aspire to be like. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Speaking of running,
Mhm.
I want to talk about, you're an ultra runner. I had never seen that term. What does that mean?
So an ultra runner, the term ultra runner means anyone really who runs, it's a distance beyond the marathon. You know, marathon's 26.2 miles, and ultra runners say realistically an ultra marathon. Well, an ultra marathon is 50K, 100K is 100 milers, 200 milers. But, you know, the thing that people say is when they're ultra runners is, I guess, really like a 50 miler or 100K, which is like 60 miles. And those are just runs or races that, you know, at that distance.
And I see that you do these all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into running?
I got into running because I wanted to be healthier. And actually, I got into running because I had knee surgery, which is kind of ironic.
Wow, that is very ironic, because isn't like the worst thing for your knees?
Yeah, the doctor's like, yeah, you're not going to really run. I was like, yeah, well,
Watch me.
Will. So, but it was just, you know, I had to get better from knee surgery. And that knee surgery was because of that mosh pit incident.
I was going to say, was that because of the mosh pit?
Yeah, it was at the Middle East. Yeah. And
oh my God. See, kids?
Yeah.
Stay out of those punk rock shows.
Stay out of those pits for sure. Like, don't get into that shit. Like,
yeah, don't. As two old punk rockers, now this isn't even in my teenage years. This is 2013. I went to you guys know this band Trash Talk?
I don't.
Thrash band from LA. I went to, and they were playing in Bushwick. I remember I went, and the singer flipped off the stage onto the crowd where I was standing. And
Oh my God.
I just heard.
Oh no!
I went to go see, and you know, because I'm older and have a chiropractor, I had to tell him, like, Dr. Schramm. He's like, what happened? I was like, so I was at this punk rock show, and the singer front flipped onto the crowd, and he like landed on my head, and I'm sure other people's head. His foot probably went somewhere else. So yeah, kids, stay at home, be good.
Just don't say. I mean, you have to stay home, but just don't get in the pit. Like,
yeah, don't get in the pit. Don't get in the pit. But yeah, we learn, right? So, but through the Middle East knee injury, you did have the surgery, and then you did become an ultra runner. So it did lead to that.
It did lead to that. You know, everything makes sense. And it was a way just to be healthier, really coming off of a knee surgery and, you know, through like cycling, rehabilitation on the stationary bike, but then walking and then like running a mile. I remember the first time I ran a mile, it was at the Osage gym that they have in Pawhuska. It was on the treadmill, and me and my sister were in there, but I was just like, oh yeah, this is finally I can do a mile. And I felt really good about that breakthrough, but it happened on a treadmill in Pawhuska.
And I've been to that gym.
Yeah. The
treadmill, I think, has to be the newest thing in there, because everything else, it's like rust. I don't know. I haven't been.
This was an older one. I mean, this was by that. This
is the one that's there.
Yeah, it's kind of by the church, and on that little main road.
Like you turn in, like not on. Oh my God, I don't even know. It's like country. The road where the Tasty Freeze was, and that's amazing that you had your breakthrough mile.
It was there, and then
that's amazing.
And then
so how long ago was this?
That was probably around 2013, 14, 15, 14, 13, I think, that mile. And then shortly after that, I was just doing a mile, and eventually till I get 3 miles nonstop. And then I was doing 5Ks, and I would enter like all these local 5Ks anywhere that would keep me accountable to show up to these places early in the morning and run and show up. And I really got into it, just running in all these different places. And then I was trying to like better my time at every 5K. And, keep in mind, this is kind of when I was still getting sober. So these were things that were really nice for me to do and experience. But at the same time, I was still smoking cigarettes. So after the race, I would smoke a cigarette and
balance. It's called balance.
Yeah, it's called balance. I knew eventually I would stop the smoking, but I had to keep doing this for me to stop because it was like eventually I was going to get tired of smoking it. And
did you notice a difference when you stopped smoking?
Of course. Yeah, for sure. I felt it was hard because cigarettes are probably the most addictive thing out there. I feel like alcohol is I feel like that was kind of not easy, but I don't really have this urge to like drink. But cigarettes, I feel like once you do it, it's always in you, like nicotine.
I love a good cigarette after
it's in your
dinner.
brain.
It's
so,
I get it.
So, that was tough, but running helped me kick that as well. And then from 10Ks, 6 miles, and then it was like half marathon. And I think I jumped from a half marathon to a 50K in 2016, which is 32 miles, and that was in Tahlequah around the near the Illinois River. This race, and I really enjoyed it and the process of it. But I remember I was really wrecked afterwards, my legs, and for like a week. But after that, I was hooked. I was hooked on that kind of journey and that experience, and hung out at 50Ks for a while, then 50 milers, and then 100Ks, and then 100 miler, and
100 miles?
Yeah, 100 miles.
Wait, how does this, tell me, how does this work? Because I don't know how does a 100-mile work? Like you start and then you stop during at a certain like darkness.
No.
What happens?
So there's different races, and they're all over the world, 100 mile races. And, for my first 100-mile race, I chose one of the hardest 100-milers out there. It's called Ouray 100. There's flat 100-milers, which are real, I guess, in the scheme of 100-milers, these are easy because there's no elevation gain. It's just kind of like running forever, like on a flat old train line or something. But I wanted to, and most of them have a lot of climbing in them, but this one in particular, called Ouray 100, is known as one of the most hardest 100-milers out there. And I wanted my first 100 to be the hardest. So if I could get it done, then any others following would be like a piece of cake. Not really a piece of cake, but I would have perspective on what's the hardest. And then I feel like I would be able to handle anything after that. And it was brutal because it was the elevation. So it's between 10,000, 9,000 feet and 14. And you're in all weather. And
are you vomiting at any point? Like from the altitude?
No, so I'm thankful that my body is able to hang with altitude. Like I think
so. You like acclimate really easy.
Yeah, we don't have time to acclimate. So you jump into these places, you heat train, and luckily Oklahoma has a lot of heat. And heat training is they call it the poor man's altitude training, but I think that's just a weird thing to say. And it's actually why these things exist, why there's so many whites and not people of color, because it is an exclusive sport, because it does take a lot of privilege to take time to train and pay these thousands of dollars, $500 to enter these races, and then thousands of dollars for a plane ticket, thousands of dollars for nutrition. And luckily I'm sponsored by a nutrition company, Goo Nutrition, shout out Per Coffee. They see what I'm doing as an artist, as a athlete of color, and they're helping try to close these gaps, of color. So, and that's a whole nother aspect.
That's a whole nother aspect that I do want to talk about too, because these organizations, foundations, it's just ironic to me, right? Like we were the original stewards of this land, and now we have these people who are trying to get like what you and Kaylee, they sponsored you for the marathon, Rising Hearts, and I know they do that, right? They're trying to get Black and brown people back into nature. But isn't it just ironic that now we have to have these foundations help us reacclimate into nature, where that's where we kind of started from. It's a symptom of colonization, and here we are. And now we have these programs to help us get back into where we were taken from and not allowed to practice and be. But I'm so thankful for stuff like that. But yeah, I just think that's so ironic that we have, there's where we at, because it is expensive to do all of that.
It is.
And I mean, you're going, the plane ticket alone, I mean, you're going like Switzerland, or where were you Like I saw the beautiful like mountains.
The Alps, probably.
Yeah.
Europe and in France. That was a race, and so that was, I think I've done 400s maybe, and that was UTMB, which is known as the Super Bowl of 100 milers. Like but they just merged with the Ironman, which is a big conglomerate sports affiliation that has like powerhouse its way into like buying all these like mom and pop, races, and then kind of making it into this like conglomerate money making, so but when I was and so I raced it under that, but I was applying and all about that prior to that merger. But yeah, I mean, mountain races, going back to that UA race, so that took like 50 hours and I only got like 10 hours of sleep in it, and just a lot of climbing. You're going through the night, and night moves quick.
So you run through the night?
Yeah, because
so you're not.
No, there's a time limit on these things that so like you have to be at this place by this, or else you're out. Because otherwise, you're just kind of creating like safety concerns, for others or race directors. Like if you can't get to this point by this, and you're not going to finish by this, basically. So
oh my god,
so
this
you're
is
out of
wild.
The race. So you have to keep moving, then there's a time limit for the whole thing. You have to finish the whole thing.
But everyone's like, okay, get out of our country, get out of our town now.
But it's a lot of races a lot of ultras have those time limits on them.
Yeah.
So
is that your favorite kind of race?
It's I don't even know what my favorite race is. I mean, they all have their own, for me, fun things about them. Every distance 5K, that's an all out effort for like 20 minutes, and it's just like kills you. And then 10K is fun. I love, I just did the New York Marathon, and that's a different beast than 100 miler. People are like, oh, it should be no sweat. It's 26 miles, but it's not, because 100 milers, you're running and you're climbing and you're power hiking, and then you stop at an aid station to eat like salami and drink some like soup, and like you're chilling at an aid station for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you're on your way. Whereas a marathon, you're like full on effort for like 3 hours, and it's a whole nother body. Like you're using your body in a whole different way. So they're completely different. I think but they take a full on dedication and like health and your body has to be strong all over to be able to handle that rigor. And endurance. So yeah, they're all interesting, but it's a dedication to life really at this point. That's definitely a huge part of me, and it's just something that I really enjoy doing. And because I'm not always, you're not always going to be able to do that.
Yes.
And you get to see a lot of the world and be in places that you would never go otherwise, and it's just fun for me to be in that way. It's hard doing this in this way, but at the same time, I look back and it's better than breaking people's hearts or my family's hearts because I'm like hurting myself or whatever.
Exactly.
I'd rather be hurting this way than the other way.
Yeah.
So I think I have to hurt one way. There's no other option, so that's
this is life.
Though. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we're hurting ourselves or we're hurting other people.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know.
I'm glad you found that. It's amazing. And I remember seeing you and just be like, oh, Yatika is like different. Like your whole body had changed. And I was like, okay, work. And I don't know, Danette or something. Oh yeah, Yatika's running. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, that's the only way. Like someone looks like that. It's like, oh, amazing. Or swimming or something like that. But love a healthy choice. I love to see that, especially being a young, also a punk rocker. There's some of us that don't make it out of that lifestyle. So I love some of us who came out of it in a healthy way. And you're definitely one of those people that is like, yes, I love that. And I think for your mind and for your art, it's so important that you have like this beautifully cleansed palette, like that you can go and focus. It must be just meditative in a way when you're running.
It's very meditative, and it's a way
but you have to go into
for me to engage with myself and with wherever I'm at. And it's really beautiful, and it's, I don't know, it's profound. Words can't really describe it. It's just an experience that I never thought was obtainable or anything like that. And really quickly too, I was never taught how to be healthy in life.
No, we weren't taught how to be healthy.
I always thought that to be an artist, you had to like struggle, and you had to like smoke cigarettes, and you had to like drink.
Yep.
Like, and I thought that was how you become a successful artist.
Yep.
You go to Santa Fe to any market when I was younger, and you see, party aspect on that. And there's this huge party aspect to being native. I don't know if it really exists anymore with the younger generation, but there was that, but there was also this taboo to it,
Yes.
And no one really explained that or talked to me about it. It was something I had to figure out on my own. So I'm hoping, like, I never, I don't want to be a role model, but I do know that, when you're younger, you look up to people and that stays in your memory. And if I can be healthy, maybe
Yes,
that'll
sir.
translate and change a whole way of being. Because I never thought that you could be an artist and be healthy at the same time. No one taught me that you can be a healthy artist. It was always that you're gonna die. You're gonna do as much as you can.
You're gonna die a poor,
have a tragic death, or something.
Yeah,
and,
but it was gonna be poetic. We like. I'm one of those. I romanticize that life. We just it was cool. Smoking cigarettes is cool.
And
it is. But it's not, and it's very unhealthy. And don't do it, you guys. It's not cool. And vaping isn't either. Now the kids these days, the artists I see, they're just vape monster. These vape monsters?
Yeah. You can. I mean, vape. There's this. And two, I want to say something that I know that there's things that are like in us that it's hard to express and to move, like to get on. But if you can practice movement and engage your body and mind, I think that is really a beneficial way to like get out of where you're at. And not saying that like you can get out of it, because I know these things are kind of like it's in us, and there's trauma in us and there's sadness, but I think movement can really help those aspects of life. And I know it's not easy, but I believe in movement that can help. So I'll just say that too, that I know just saying being healthy is one thing, and it's not easy to do that, but I think movement can help in that.
Movement can help, and it feels so good. And I'm saying this to myself too, because it is a frame of mind for me when I'm in it, and I'm just basic. I go to the gym, I ride my bike around. Like my perfect day is like being able to ride my bike in town. And you've been to Beacon, it's like cute, and like go sit by the Fishkill Creek, go to the library. I'm very simple and basic. And but when I go to the gym, I've never regretted it. Like I've never felt bad leaving the gym. Getting there, I'll be like, oh my God, I have every excuse. But going, I feel so amazing when I leave. And even just stretching your body. Like, I was lucky growing up. My mom had her company had passes to the YMCA. And I remember being like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym. I've always kind of been, I've always been fat, but I love moving and I love sweating. And I would go to the YMCA and I would work out. And I remember I would go to Spangles, and this is in Wichita, Kansas, where I grew up, and have like dinner. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. I'll get some. It was like funny. Like, you don't know how to eat healthy. We weren't taught that. But I loved that. It's just like, oh, let me go eat some burger and fries, which God, Spangles is so good. Anyway, so love that message. Love movement. It's so important. But I want to finish out this conversation about your show that I saw last night. It was amazing, and I wasn't expecting the pieces to be that big. And wow, they're incredible. So the show was called Home as It Was. And when did you start working on those pieces? And would you call them shields? I know they're mentioned.
I would call them shields. I started working on that work not long ago, actually, like in December.
What?
Yeah.
How? How many assistants do you have?
One.
No.
Yeah.
Stop.
I was hands-on sewing like crazy.
Oh my God, that's great. And how many pieces?
Well,
9?
There was more
in the
but
show.
We had to whittle them down to what you saw in the show.
Okay. Wow.
So, but yeah, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of effort for sure. And I had a new temporary space specifically for this project. A really big space where I could lay out all the material. because I have another studio in Tulsa that's just for my painting, but I needed a new space for this project. It was like, if I'm going to have this show, then this is what I need. And so we got it and went to work, and 3 sewing machines in there and a lot of tables, a lot of tents everywhere.
Did you get a tent sponsor?
No, like I said, it happened pretty quick. I think next time I could probably get a tent sponsor.
Okay, so you didn't have a tent sponsor. That fabric, is it rayon?
The polyester type?
Yeah, what is that? I love that. Fabric is one of my favorite. I see why you wanted to use that because there's many levels of why.
Mm-hmm.
But to work with it, it is thin, and I don't want to say flimsy,
mm-hmm.
but it also seems like it's hard to support without a few layers involved
mm-hmm.
with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that you have like some layers sewn on, which just make it even more juicy, and like the texture and the art is incredible. So tell me, how did this idea of the shields come about? Or why did you want to do this show and make this in such a short amount of time? December is crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's my second show with this gallery, and the first show happened in 21. I think it was December, maybe it was December 22 or 21, one of those years. Either way, Omicron was happening and it was cold as hell out. So it was a different kind of vibe than what we had last night.
Okay.
And so I'm thankful that a lot of people could come out, and, it wasn't super cold, and there was, no Omicron happening. But in that previous show, I had done some works that were hung up that hadn't been seen in New York, that were from a series from 2017, 18 called Tent Metaphor series, which are actually sculptural works using actual repurposed tents from the Standing Rock encampment that were salvaged and used to repurpose. And I was able to get a hold of them and turn them into these pieces to talk about.
How did you get the tents from
Standing Rock? I had found out where they had, after the big camp cleanup, they took a lot of the pieces, things that they had found and they could use that were going to be able to be repurposed to a warehouse in Colorado. And,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I went to Colorado.
So they didn't just throw it all away.
They threw a lot of it away, but some of it they kept and were going to try to repurpose. And I was able to get in touch with these people and went to the warehouse in Colorado. And it was just like walking in. When I went in there, it was just this amazing sight, because you could still smell the camp and the fires and everything. And
that idea just came to you to repurpose those.
Yeah, I mean, because at the time I was making paintings about, I was in Seattle for a bit, and I was making paintings about, I got a grant from Evergreen College to make, I had a proposal, and I was going to make paintings about Seattle and donate some to Daybreak Star, their cultural center up in Seattle. But what stood out to me in Seattle was the homeless encampments and the situation that was going on there. That's all in the Pacific Northwest, or all in California and all on the Pacific coast. But in 2016, I was really struck by that and wanted to make paintings about it. Then I went to Standing Rock, and I was again confronted with tents, and things started to click to me about these forms and shapes and people being protected in these vulnerable moments. Through these thin materials, but yet they're so colorful. And as a colorist, these speak to me. So I was making paintings about tents and the shapes of them, and cutting them up on the canvas. Not really cutting them up, but juxtaposing different shapes of tents on a canvas in my paintings, and then proposing it and putting it out there to the public for them to come up with their own solutions as to what's going on in this world. And started with Tent Metaphor that, and then I was doing paintings based on the Oklahoma flag with the Osage shield, and reclaiming that symbol as an Osage artist, because it's all fun and games, I guess, when you look at it, but to me, I see a lot of problems in that flag. That's an Osage shield, and that was meant to protect the warrior and community, and this was pre-contact, pre-removal, and we had to bury a lot of these things, way of life, the warrior society that contained that. There's a lot of medicine in that, and now it's exhumed, and that flag was made in 1924, so I don't have to say much, but that period, it doesn't reflect what the reality is.
Yeah,
And,
especially our experience as Osages, our ancestors at that time were going through specifically.
We live in a red
20s.
state,
and the Governor Stitt, fights the indigenous, our sovereignty
Also,
rights.
fuck Governor Stitt.
Exactly. Fuck Stitt.
Fuck Stitt forever. You ain't Indian. Don't ever try to ever claim, but you're trash. So fuck Stitt. Anyway.
For real.
Ugh.
And I wanted to give that shield. I wanted to give it love. I wanted to give it
repurpose it, reclaim it,
proper reclamation or conversation.
Yes.
So I was making paintings about it, in my own context, and then I made a painting or a piece last year that brought the tents and the shield together to make a shield to talk about. I think all that in culmination, and I felt like I found some success in merging the two.
Yes.
And this exhibition is just a full on, let's go into it. Let's just make a whole exhibition of shields. Because the only time you see shields are in books or in collections and museums. And it's like, wow, those look powerful as hell. Like, like these eagle feathers and these like symbols on them. And every tribe really had it, a shield, some way, in a specific way they made them. But I wanted to make a contemporary shield now that reflects how we need to protect our spirit, our human spirit, and the human condition, and also
our
talk about
sovereignty,
talk about displacement, talk about climate disaster displacement, talk about genocide, talk about all that. But a little material tries to shield and protect ourselves in these situations. That material that you're talking about, that can be called flimsy.
Yeah.
But is a reality and a realistic image and a realistic material that is out there in the world that is a conversation and a shield for so many in some serious situations, all created by settler capitalist society. So these shields are, meant to confront you and maybe, protect you or make you think. I'm a colorist, I'm a painter, but also, I'm, these works with the actual tent material, those are just like pieces of my paintbrush, pieces of my identity, all these colors coming out through all these shapes and materials, but I'm actually physically, cutting them up and putting them back together in a format, in a way that is reflective of this day and age. Not the way it passed, where I don't have to use buffalo hides to make these shields, but I'm using real materials that are out on the plains now, that are out in the cityscapes, so because that's what we have. We have tents instead of buffaloes.
Yes.
So,
and that's also just as people who were nomadic and went on hunts and used hides to create temporary shelters. Tents are our temporary shelters. I remember I love camping. Luna and I went camping out at Shinnecock for the dance in last summer, and I love being in a tent. Like I said, I love that material, and I love waking up in a tent. I love the structure of it, and it's a beautiful thing, and it folds up into a pack like that. It makes me crazy in the best way. So seeing your shields last night and the way you just said, it does look like your paintings and it does look like a paintbrush. There's certain parts of it, me knowing your art, being like, wow, you did this with this material. And like, even just the seams, the sewing, the stitches of it are incredible. I highly recommend everyone see Yatika's Shields series. It is beautiful, and I was so happy, and thank you for inviting me to that show, because I wasn't expecting the scale, and I was so happy that they were that big. And I saw that you were selling, and I was like, that's right, buy these damn shills, reclaim this Osage artist. And reclaiming the Oklahoma seal is so important. And that's why the name of my podcast is Let's Have a Powwow. Yeah. Because I have been in so many professional settings where producers have said, okay, let's have a powwow real quick to talk about trousers or a t-shirt or, in these ways. And, there's some people that powwows can be sacred to some people. And to deduce it to talking about having a meeting, suggesting a meeting. That's why I wanted to name this podcast that. I am so thankful that you are here with me and that you shared your story, and that you took the time. And I'm gonna let you go because I know you're busy. But before you go, do you have any website, social media that you would like people to look at, or anything that you just want to shout out? Any sponsors that you want to give love to? Go for it.
Yeah, thank you for, talking with me about the exhibition. It was a really good time, and I'm really glad you could be there and see you. And yeah, there's so much to that show. I hope people do get a chance to see these shields. It's new work for me in a new direction, and I can't wait to see what's next in the evolution of it. I want to thank my family, mom and dad, sister Ngozi, my partner Haley.
I met Haley last night.
Yeah.
She's such a sweetie. Yeah. Your mom was talking about her when she was in New York a couple years ago. And wait, that's the same girl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry. But she was saying how much she loved her.
Cool.
I was like, oh, so cute. And she's an artist too?
Yeah.
Okay.
An artist.
Love it.
And Goo Nutrition,
how do you spell Goo?
GU.
Okay, GU.
Yeah. Pert Coffee. There's a few Rising Hearts, Jordan over there. She's always doing great work. And, I'm really thankful that I have an opportunity to work with some really amazing individuals that are really doing great advocacy and advocating for Indigenous rights in all these different ways. And I don't know, it's crazy, where everything's gone to, through art, the journey of art and health and movement and running, and the individuals I meet along the way that practice both. But it's cool to be back in New York. We talked about, I used to be on these streets, and it's nice to come here. And congratulations on everything you're doing. I really appreciate and respect the work you're doing in styling. I know it's believe me, it's all kind of related and linked. And I get what you're saying and why you're here in New York, and then as also being from home in Oklahoma and being Osage, I understand, but thank you.
Yeah.
For you too, and for everything. So I'm just stoked to be here and be on this podcast. And yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Yatika. Yeah. Really quick, what is your perfect day? Okay, yes, you're right, Stephen. You're right. What does a perfect day look like to you? It can be super simple. I told you mine. I like to ride my little bike around town. I get a little coffee.
Yeah.
A little stimulant.
A perfect day is getting no emails.
So you have no perfect days.
Yeah. or no stress around like the computer, maybe.
Oh my God, yes.
And just being able to be outside with the things I love, and getting good sunshine and being around water,
Yes.
So I think that's a perfect day, really, without any of the computer or phone or things like that,
Yes. Disconnecting.
Yeah, disconnecting.
One last question. Okay. Do you get the runner's high? Does that happen on those long 100-mile Johns?
Yeah, it can happen. Yeah, it can. I think runner's high is different for each individual who's a practitioner of running, and it can be really at any distance, I think, but as long as they're really in the moment of it, and they're pushing their heart rates up, and their mind and breathing are kind of linked up, and
I experienced that when I roller skate. I'm a roller skater, and it's about hour 3.
Okay.
You're gotten over your legs hurting, gotten over your shins burning, and it just clicks, and it is a real high, and nothing hurts anymore. And I'm like, this must be what people who run feel like. I don't know. Is that what it feels like? Does it feel like you're just kind of like in this trance zone?
Yeah, you kind of feel like you're in a good zone, and everything kind of feels effortless, and it's like
it's just like the endorphins or whatever it is, serotonin. It is just like, I don't know. It's like the most amazing thing, but it definitely takes me like a good 3 hours to get to that point. Because if I would roller skate, it would be like a 4 or 5 hour ordeal inside, just going around in a inside wooden floor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so is that a runner's high?
Yeah, I would think that's a runner's high for sure. Definitely.
Okay, cool. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. Okay, we're gonna let you go. Thanks again. Let's have a powwow podcast. Thank you, Yatika. Bye. Fucked it.
Let's Have a Powwow is created and hosted by me, Amy Farid. This episode was engineered by Jason Guitano and Stephen Franco. Logo designed by Daniela Ritku. And please follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Let's Have a Powwow pod on all platforms. You can also support us by following, liking, and leaving comments. I want to hear from you. So the DMs are open. Don't be shy, cousins. See you soon.